what does IRAC have to do with the LSAT? That's the question. Just to understand that IRAC is the process through which attorneys reason. That's what we do. We deal with the issue, the rule, we apply the issue to the rule, that's the analysis, and we draw a conclusion. There's nothing elaborate about this, there's nothing fancy about this. If you look at the Supreme Court decision in the Affordable Care Act, the first thing the court had to do was decide, well, what's the issue? The issue is the Affordable Care Act constitutional as a proper exercise of the Commerce Clause? An alternative issue is, can the Affordable Care Act be treated as a tax? The issue was then applied to the law by the court. The law is the Affordable Care Act itself. So you take the issue and you simply apply it to the law. The process of analysis is what you would have read in the decision if you have read the decision, which is applying the issue, is this a proper exercise of the Commerce Clause, to the law, which is the wording of the law itself. That analysis will lead to a conclusion, and that is how we attorneys function. Again, there is nothing elaborate about this. It is disciplined for sure. It is methodical for sure. There are no tricks. So now let's transition this to the LSAT and say, well, why should you consider applying IRAC to the LSAT? Well, again, with the context being that what the LSAT, the primary purpose the LSAT serves is, it correlates with your first year law school class rank, better than any other factor. So that's what it does. And when you come to law school, this is the way you're going to reason. There may be different acronyms, but essentially it's what's the issue, what's the law, apply the issue to the law and reach a conclusion. So on the LSAT, let's say you're working with logical reasoning, and you're going to read, the first thing you're going to read is, well, what's the issue? Well, the issue is the question. Identify a flaw, strengthen an argument, weaken an argument, identify an assumption. That is the issue that sets you on path. The next issue is, well, what's the rule? What's the law? Well, the law is the argument that appears above the question. And so you must read that argument and control all of that argument as you would as an attorney. You then apply the questions, so you're perhaps identifying a flaw to the argument itself, and lo and behold, your mind is inexorably performing the analysis. You have no choice. Not memorization, it's analysis. If your mind performs analysis well, adroitly, then you're going to do well on this exam. But if you have misread the issue, if you have misread even slightly the law you were given, your analysis is corrupted. What all this is designed to do is to produce a conclusion that follows logically from that. So the folks who have preceded you and who have written what you are reading logically concluded that from the information given, this is where you were to end up. In analytical reasoning, again, what is the issue? Well, the issue is what must be true, what could be true. Nothing complicated about it. In analytical reasoning, the law is different. The law is the constraints, well, it's the original information you were given with the constraints applied. That's the law. And in analytical reasoning, you're being tested to see if you can develop the law out of its individual parts. So in analytical reasoning, you take the original conditions, you apply the constraints, you weave the threads into a fabric, and you have a law if you have done that carefully. The analysis in analytical reasoning generally is very straightforward. That is to say that if you have identified the issue, so you've not forgotten that the word except, modified, which and following must be true. And if you have developed the law, and developed it thoroughly, well then you will apply the issue to the law and you will reach a conclusion. And the conclusion is designed, it is the logical outcome of what you just did. So if you identify the issue, if you identify the law, if you apply the issue to the law in analytical reasoning, you will arrive at the outcome that the folks who designed this have already arrived at. In reading comprehension, again, what's the issue? What's the question presented? What's the main point of the argument? What would the author infer about something else? That's the issue. That targets your mind to a specific issue. In reading comprehension, the law, the rule, if you will, is the passage, or if you're in the comparative passages. So that's 450 words of a law. That's a lot of law. So in reading comprehension, very, very much you're being tested on, are you able to retain 450 words, plus or minus, but 450 words of complex text, and are you then able to apply an issue to that law? The analysis is the very same thing, the application of the issue, which I find is the main point, to the law you just read, the passage. What's the main point of the passage? When your mind has wrapped itself with precision around the issue, when your mind has wrapped itself with precision around the law, i.e. the passage, the analysis your mind will engage in should produce the same outcome that was produced by the folks who wrote what you are reading. That is what IRAC has to do with the LSAT.